Hello everybody. Today I'll start my third session of reproductive physiology, that is the male reproductive system. The learning objective of today's class is we have a brief discussion about the the anatomy of male reproductive organs. We'll know about the steps of spermatogenesis and not about the factors of spermatogenesis here, but we'll go to the maturation of sperm, that is spermiogenesis and spermiation. Then we'll go to the maturation of sperm in female genital tract. Subsequently, we'll know about the constituents of semen and semen analysis and functions of Sertoli cells. In the next day, we'll continue our discussion with the factors controlling the spermatogenesis and the hormones. So with this learning objectives, let us proceed for the class. Now, first is the male reproductive organs. Now, in the male reproductive system, we see that very interestingly, the male gonad, that is the testis, is outside the male body, that is in the scrotal sac. And that is because the temperature required for spermatogenesis is much lower, about 2 to 4 degrees below the body temperature. And that is very important for normal sperm production. That is why the players who are using the binders for a long time, they have reduced sperm count because their scrotal sac is not ventilated, and so they have a higher scrotal temperature. So now once the sperm is being produced, then it is ejected in the epididymis. It's a long coil tube. Then it goes via the vas deferens and enters the lower abdomen. And here the vas crosses to the opposite side, posterior to the bladder, where it meets the ejaculatory duct, which is actually the meeting place of the vas along with the duct of seminal vesicle. This is the seminal vesicle, and the duct join to form the ejaculatory duct. So the secretion of the vas and the seminal vesicle, which constitutes the main part of the semen, and this is rich in fructose, which provides nutrition to the sperm. We see that the secretions are poured now into the prostatic urethra. This is the prostate, and this is the prostatic urethra, where the seminal fluid is being poured, which now enters the penile urethra and finally is being ejaculated. So, coming to the constituents of semen, we see that the average volume of semen per ejaculate is about 2.5 to 3.5 milliliter per ejaculate. And we see several glands and secretions are being secreting the total seminal fluid, of which epididymis has a very small percentage, 1 to 2%, and it has L-carnitine and glycerophosphocholine. They maintain the outer cholesterol coat of the sperm. Now, next, coming to the vas deferens, which is also a minimal contribution, has mainly the fructose, but the main contribution is of the seminal vesicle, which contributes 60% of the seminal fluid, and important constituents are amino acid and fructose, which provides nutrition to the motile sperm, and also prostaglandins that are important for the motility of the sperm and the progression of the sperm fluid, the seminal fluid, towards the prostatic urethra. Now, prostate contributes only 20% of the seminal fluid, but there are important constituents like FPP, that is the fertilization promoting peptide, FPP, the fertilization promoting peptide, which actually helps in the sperm capacitation in the female genital tract. Then there is zinc, which stabilizes the DNA of the sperm, and there is PSA, which is the prostate specific antigen, which gives us an idea about prostatic health. It is highly increased in prostatic malignancy along with the alkaline phosphatase and acid phosphatase. And fibrinolysin is there to not allow the seminal fluid to clot. Then lastly, there is bulbourethral glands or Cowper's gland, which contributes 5% to the seminal fluid. And here are galactose, sialic acid, and important is mucus, which helps in the lubrication. But the most important constituent of semen is secreted from testis, that is 100 to 200 million, average 100 million sperms per milliliter. That is per day ejaculation after a few days of abstinence. And this count is taken to be the normal semen count. Now, men with sperm count between 20 to 40 million per milliliter is less fertile, definitely. But fertility not only depends on the sperm count, but also on the sperm motility. That is very important. If the sperm is immotile or hypermotile, then also, even with high sperm count, male may be infertile. But when the male has a sperm count less than 20 million, they are usually unfertile. So it is this semen analysis which gives us an idea about the male fertility. Now coming to the cross section of the testis. Now in testis, we find that it is developing, as we have said, from the medulla of the genital tubercle, and it has been divided into a number of lobules. About 200 to 300 lobules are present in a single testis, and they are separated by the fibrous septum. And in each lobule, there are located highly tortuous seminiferous tubules, 1 to 3 in number, and average length of these tubules are about 70 to 80 centimeter. So you can understand how coiled they are, how tortuous they are, and they are ending in a network of ducts at the cortex, which is known as retitestis, and this gives rise to a number of efferent ductules. And efferent ductules actually constitute the long tube and highly coiled, highly tortuous tube, that is the epididymis. Now, epididymis is said to be about 20 feet, 6 meters long. So it is highly coiled and tortuous throughout its length, so that the sperm takes about 10 to 12 days average to traverse this epididymis, because while the sperm is traversing this length, it is matured. There is capacitation, it gains the power, and so it is highly coiled and very long epididymis, which ultimately ends in vas deferens. And then we have said that how vas travels behind the bladder to end in the ejaculatory duct, and via the prostatic urethra, it ends in the penile urethra, from where this sperm is ejaculated. So next, coming to the cross section of the seminiferous tubule. So the 1 to 3 seminiferous tubules, which are located in each lobule of testis, actually in cross section shows different stages of maturing sperm. So all these blue cells are nothing but the maturing sperms. This, at the outer wall, there is the spermatogonia. These all are the spermatogonia, and then they progress towards the lumen as they mature. That is, these are the various stages of dividing spermatocytes, primary and secondary spermatocytes, and ultimately they will form the stale, and that is the spermatid. And when they are released into the lumen, they are fully matured, and these are known as the spermatozoa. So there are different stages of developing spermatozoa from spermatogonia, the primitive germ cells, and they mainly constitute the seminiferous tubules. And in between the sperm cells, these pyramidal cells which are present are nothing but the Sertoli cells, the sustentacular or the supporting cells, which have immense function, but the major function is they are the nursing these different stages of developing sperm by providing nutrition, because they are highly laden with glycogen. We'll come to the functions of Sertoli cells a bit later. And these are the interstitial cells of Leydig, which are secreting the testosterone. And it is very important to maintain a microenvironment within this seminiferous tubule. That is, it should be a sterile one, and there should be high concentration of the androgen hormones, especially the testosterone, for the proper maturation of the sperm. So now coming to the functions of Sertoli cell. One very important function of Sertoli cell is the blood testis barrier. That is, you can see that these are the sustentacular cells, and these are the different stages of maturing sperm, and this is the basement membrane, and here is the lumen. So these are the spermatozoa being ejected into the lumen, and these are the different stages of development of sperm. But they are being tightly interposed by the sustentacular cells, which are known as Sertoli cells. And you can see that there are tight junction between each other, these cells, and the developing sperm. So that, and these sustentacular cells are very tightly bound with the basement membrane as well, so that they can membrane and maintain an barrier between the seminiferous tubule and the outer blood vessels, and thus help in proper maturation of the sperm. Now, the main function of this blood testis barrier is to prevent escape of the unique antigen, that is the sperm, because they are recognized as foreign antigen by our body. So, to prevent the immune attack over the sperm and to prevent the antigen to escape into the blood vessels, the blood testis barrier is very important. So the activation of the immune system is being prevented, and autoimmune response is restrained such that there is no sterility. So now coming to the functions of Sertoli cells, we can say that, as we have said, that they are the nurse cells, and most important function of these glycogen-laden pyramidal cells, which are being tightly attached to the basement membrane with themselves and along with a developing spermatozoa, is the glycogen-laden nutrition to the sperm cells, glycogen-laden cells providing nutrition to the spermatozoa. Definitely, they also provide structural support, and they accommodate themselves in such a way that the gradual movement of germ cells from the basement membrane towards the lumen is being favored, is being helped. So that is another important function of Sertoli cells, to help in the movement of the germ cells. Now, next, as we have already discussed about the blood testis barrier, they protect the spermatocytes from immune attack to prevent the sterility due to the autoimmune activation. Then they maintain the unique tubular and microenvironment, that is within the seminiferous tubule. A microenvironment, sterile microenvironment, should be maintained with high androgen concentration, mainly the testosterone from the surrounding Leydig cells, which diffuses into the seminiferous tubules, and they help in maturation of sperm. And this high concentration of androgen is also helped by ABP, androgen binding protein, which is also secreted from the Sertoli cells. So this maintaining of unique microenvironment by the Sertoli cells is another very important function. Besides that, Sertoli cell has a phagocytic function. What does the phagocytose? The apoptotic germ cells, which have undergone programmed cell death, or the residual body, that when the sperm is maturing, the excess cytoplasm remains as residual body, which is being phagocytosed by the Sertoli cells. And in this way, Sertoli cell acts as a scavenger maintaining the sterile microenvironment within the tubule. Now coming to the hormonal role. Now Sertoli cells does not directly secrete hormone, but what does they do is they secrete the inhibin and the activin, which has a negative feedback role on the testosterone secretion. Besides that, they have the aromatase CYP19, which convert 10% of testosterone to estrogen. And this is very important for the bony growth, for the maturation and brain development, and so on and so forth. Now then comes to the secretion of 5-alpha reductase. This 5-alpha reductase enzyme is also present in the Sertoli cells, being secreted in the Sertoli cells, which convert testosterone into dihydrotestosterone. And we know that this is very important also for the secondary sexual characteristics to develop. And last but not the least are other secretory functions of Sertoli cells, of which the androgen binding protein we have already discussed, that due to this androgen binding protein and due to the blood testis barrier, this high androgen concentration around the maturing sperm can be maintained. Then MIF, Mullerian inhibiting factors, we know several cytokines and several other secretions of Sertoli cells are there. So this in brief is the function of the Sertoli cells. Now comes to the steps of spermatogenesis. So the main cells within the seminiferous tubule are the developing spermatogonia cells into the matured spermatozoa. So the spermatogenesis is a process by which the mature gamete develops in a seminiferous tubule. And it is a regular, orderly, and sequential process. Although all the steps can be take place concurrently, but it should come one after another to give proper development of the sperm. And they can be divided into 3 distinct phases. But as I told you, they can occur concurrently, but there are 3 distinct phases. One is the replication of spermatogonia by mitotic division to primary spermatocyte. So this spermatogonia initially undergoes a number of mitotic division, replicational division, and this occurs throughout the childhood, even before the child or the male reaches the adulthood or puberty. So several mitotic division to form primary spermatocyte, replicational division, and then the meiotic division, the reductional division, starts only at the attainment of puberty. So meiotic division, it starts only when we go for the puberty. Then the meiotic division with the haploid spermatids, they develop, and then definitely these spermatids have to undergo a huge amount of processing and maturation to develop spermatozoa, and this process is known as spermiogenesis. So after this meiotic division, there is no further division, no meiosis, neither mitosis, but there are maturation and differentiation of spermatids to spermatozoa, and this process is known as spermiogenesis. And finally, the sperms are ejected into the lumina of the tubule by spermiation, and here is the active role of Sertoli cells in this spermiation. Now, so spermatogenesis. The outermost cells, as we have seen, or the primitive cells, germ cells, are the spermatogonia in the embryo of the male fetus. Now, spermatogonia during the infancy and childhood undergoes several mitotic divisions. At least 8 mitotic divisions they undergo to form spermatogonium A and B. Now, spermatogonium A is going to be stored for the renewal of spermatogenesis when required. So, this do not take part in the direct spermatogenesis. Rather, it is the spermatogonia B which takes part into the spermatogenesis. So spermatogonia A is reserved for the self-renewal, and the spermatogonia B enters into the spermatogenesis. And from the spermatogonia B to the primary spermatocyte, again, a number of replicational division occurs, so that from spermatogonia B, at least 16 spermatocytes are formed from one spermatogonia B when the male attains the puberty. Now, this arrest of this spermatogenesis occurs at the stage of primary spermatocyte till puberty. Now, as the puberty is attained, it is seen that the first meiotic division takes place and the primary spermatocytes change into two secondary spermatocytes. And then the second reductional division takes place. So, from one primary spermatocyte, we get 4 spermatids. So, if we calculate from 16 spermatocytes, we get 64 spermatids. That is, one spermatogonia can give rise to 16 spermatids. And this span is about 74 days from the spermatogonia to the spermatocytes, and subsequently from spermatocyte to the spermatids. It takes approximately 64 from primary spermatocyte, once they enters into the reductional division, up to the spermatid is about 74 days. And then we have said that they undergo the spermiogenesis, that is the certain maturational changes, so that they become the spermatozoa or the sperm cells. But here 4 spermatids for 4 sperm cells or spermatozoa. So there is neither any replicational division nor any reductional division. So spermiogenesis, as we have said, is the maturation and differentiation of a spermatid into a typical adult sperm. And these spermatids actually undergo nuclear condensation. The nucleus condenses to a smaller one. Okay, with first we see that the Golgi apparatus appear at one end or one pole of the nucleus, and from here they are releasing the acrosomal vesicles, and these acrosomal vesicles are rich in enzymes like proteolytic enzyme like acrosin or hyaluronidase, neuroamidase, which collects at one end of the nucleus, and ultimately they form the acrosomal cap. This is called the acrosome or the acrosomal cap. And this is nothing but a fine membrane, vesicular membrane, which is having hydrolytic and the proteolytic enzymes in it. So there is a nuclear condensation, there is formation of acrosome, and gradually we see that the cytoplasm also shrinks in such a way that the mitochondria, they aggregate towards the neck region of the sperm. These are the mitochondria which are aggregating, and the excess of the cytoplasm is shredded out as the residual body, which is being scavenged, as we told you, by the Sertoli cells. So ultimately, the nuclear condensation occurs, the acrosomal cap occurs, there is shrinkage of the cytoplasm, and at the other pole we see that the centrioles develop, and they give rise to microtubule, and this microtubule will finally end in the flagella, motile tail of the sperm, which is known as flagella. So finally, we get adult sperm, which is a very long one, about 55 to 65 micrometer long sperm, with its 3 portions, that is the head region, the middle piece, and the tail region. So the spermatozoa, which is intricate, motile, flagellated cell, rich in DNA and having 3 parts. One is the head, then the middle piece and the tail end. Now the head is nothing but the condensation of the nuclear material rich in DNA, and no further replication of DNA is possible after this stage. And then comes about the middle piece, where we see, oh, okay, and in the head there is an acrosomal cap, and as we told you that this acrosomal cap is rich in the proteolytic enzyme like acrosine, then the hydrolytic enzymes, the hyaluronidase and the neuraminidase, and there is a plasma membrane. Then we come to the middle piece, where there is centriole, which gives rise to the pair of microtubule, and here we see that the mitochondria aggregates, because this flagellated tube requires a high amount of energy for its movement, and this energy is being supplied by the mitochondria. And coming to the tail piece, we see that the ATP is stored in the mitochondria, and we see that there is a long tail, which actually are a pair of contractile microtubule. This eggshell filament is nothing but a pair of contractile microtubule, and by catalysis of ATP, we see that there is sliding movement between microtubule, and this sliding movement actually imparts flagellar motion to the spermatozoa. The whip-like flagellar movement is due to the sliding movement of the microtubule. So this is the typical spermatozoa or the sperm. Now, once this sperm is formed and it enters into the female, it is ejected into the epididymis, and in the epididymis it undergoes further maturation, and it acquires progressive motility. The sperm, which was motile in the efferent ductule or retitestis, becomes more motile, progressively motile, as they enter into the epididymis due to the activation of a unique protein called catspar at the sperm tail. It is actually the calcium channel being activated by cyclic AMP, and increased entry of calcium in flux causes increased motility in the epididymis. And in epididymis, it also undergoes changes in metabolism and morphology, ultimately to reach the stage of capacitation. So what is capacitation? Capacitation is a process that allows the acrosome reaction to occur so that the sperm can penetrate the zona pellucida of the oocyte. And the physiological changes that confer on sperm the ability to fertilize is called capacitation. So this capacitation, we find, it begins at epididymis, where it acquires progressive motility due to the activation of the catspar protein. And in the female genital tract, we see the sperm has to stay for at least 4 to 8 hours, because it requires 6 to 7 hours for the capacitation to occur. Now, in capacitation, what occurs is that the cholesterol coat, as I told you, the secretions from the epididymis, they form this cholesterol coat of the sperm. This actually is withdrawn. And we find that the surface protein is being redistributed. And finally, there is influx of calcium into the tail region, which the coat is being removed. And this influx of calcium causes the whip lashing movement. Now, we have said that it acquires this whip lashing movement due to the catspar protein at epididymis. And in the female genital tract, there is another protein called the fertilization promoting peptide, which is being secreted from prostate. This prostatic secretion again helps in the influx of calcium. This FPP helps in the calcium influx into the tail of the flagellated tail of the sperm, and helping in the whip lashing movement. This sperm motility is very, very important for its capacitation or its entry into the female ovum. So this capacitated sperm only can penetrate the corona radiata and enter the zona pellucida and undergo acrosomal reaction. So if we see that what are the changes taking place in the female genital tract, then first is the capacitation, which has started in the epididymis and ending in the female genital tract. Then comes the acrosomal reaction and penetration through zona pellucida, and finally there is fertilization. So this is a sperm nucleus, as we see. This is the acrosomal cap, and this is the plasma membrane. And here we see that there are receptors, zona pellucida receptors, ZP receptors, 1, 2, 3, several receptors. And this is actually the gel coat or jelly-like coat on the ovum. And this is the vitelline membrane, and this is the perivitelline space. So sperm, once it comes in contact with the jelly-like coat, it has to first penetrate through this jelly-like coat, and then it has to produce holes in this vitelline membrane for the sperm nucleus to enter into the ovum. So that is what is known as acrosomal reaction. So here we see that as the sperm comes near the jelly coat of the ovum, we see this acrosome, it is being liberated. That is, there is a liberation of the hydrolytic enzymes in dissolving the jelly-like coat. So it dissolves or it hydrolyzes, and there was proteolytic enzyme, the acrosin was also present. So the jelly-like coat was finally hydrolyzed, and it sends out, the head sends out actin stick, it is called. Actin filament comes out of the acrosomal process, and they actually leads to, they bind with the, these are the ZP receptors on the vitelline membrane. And finally, they produces small pores in the vitelline membrane. And these acrosomal enzymes now act on this vitelline membrane, and there is a large hole. So initially there was a contact, then there was a acrosomal reaction, that is pouring of the hydrolytic enzymes producing the small pores, and now it is the actin which is binding with the ZP receptors, and now there's contact and fusion of the egg membrane. That is the nuclear membrane of the sperm fuses with the vitelline membrane, and we see that the sperm nucleus is enters into the ovum, and there is cortical reaction for to prevent the polyspermy. Cortical reaction, that is fusion of the gamete membrane, it becomes thick, there is calcium deposit, and so that no sperm can enter further into this vitelline or the perivitelline space, penetrating the vitelline membrane. This vitelline membrane is being strengthened. This is the cortical reaction. So main aim is to allow the entry of one sperm flow nucleus, which occurs through the acrosomal reaction in the ovum. And finally, this is when this male pronucleus enters and fertilizes the cell. So this is all for today. So to sum up, we can say that the maturation of sperm is the main function of the testis, and this maturity of the sperm, the process is known as spermatogenesis, which occurs in a sterile microenvironment, which is very rich in the androgen proteins, androgen hormones. And we find that not only the production of spermatid, but its maturation step by step in the seminiferous tubule, in the epididymis, as well in the female genital tract, finally leads to its capacity to penetrate and fertilize an ovum. So next day we'll continue with the spermatogenesis, its factors controlling, and the male hormone. Thanking you very much. We end the class today.